to switch a little bit the topic towards intelligence. So first of all, my name is Adrian Porcescu. I'm a senior cybersecurity manager in the R&D team with Recorded Future and with the company for about 5 years now. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, best practices for adopting intelligence-led security operations and mainly leveraging Azure Sentinel and Defender for Endpoint to do that. Now, of course, the main question comes in, and why intelligence, right? And really, the answer to that, a simple answer would be that knowing what's happening inside your organization is not really enough, right? Of course, we talk about the value of threat intelligence, and we will touch with some examples around the value for, the classic security operation stages like prevention, detection, and incident response. But also, when we talk about intelligence and its value, we need to realize that this additional context might allow us to differentiate, first of all, against, the bad from the good. And if that's one aspect of being, bringing value on top of the reactive approach of knowing what's happening inside, intelligence also brings the picture of what's happening outside your fences. And by fences, of course, I mean the hybrid approach with cloud and on-premise. And really, we have intelligence bringing perspective that is not capable of being integrated with the internal perspective, except through having visibility outside the fences, right? And here we talk about things like, for example, having a domain that a certain threat actor has been registering a typo squad for with a certificate, and getting an alert to that, and also having a more, let's say, proactive approach using intelligence and understanding how the landscape changes, so you can adapt your defenses and prevention against those changes. And that might seem, simple enough. Let's adopt intelligence. But when we talk about intelligence and the challenges and the opportunities and the best practices that this approach, we need to take a step back and think about what is actually the intelligence production lifecycle. And of course, intelligence is requirement based, so we need to formulate the problem to identify solutions. But when we talk about producing intelligence, there are some few stages that are essential in order to get and obtain that intelligence that is indeed relevant for our companies and for our businesses, right? And when we talk about the production of intelligence, one of the very important stages is the collection part, right? We need to have that visibility in those areas that will allow us to get the data, to transform it further on information, and then to extract the intelligence that will be allowing us to improve our workflows and our security operations. And also, once we talk about covering this challenge of having visibility around all of these sources, we need to realize that all of these, describe data or present data in different forms. We might be talking about structured data, like a simple feed that we want to collect, or we might be talking about just some chatter on the dark web about our companies, right? So when we talk about the collection, there is a large challenge here, or being able to get access to those sources, but also to be able to process those data points in order to identify the relevant relationships. And think about here, leveraging things like NLP or leveraging things like artificial intelligence to actually be able to connect to structure, first of all, and be able to connect all of those data points for identifying those relevant relationships. And of course, on top of that, we talk about analysis, and then can be done internally by your analysts once, the data has been collected and processed properly. But you also want to benefit by some automated analysis that is performed by the intelligence vendors, right? Things like automated risk scoring and associated evidence, things like trends, right? So it is important also to consider what is the output of the analysis that the intelligence production lifecycle is offering. And of course, the latest stage in this production lifecycle, we talk about dissemination. We talk about, delivering that intelligence to the right places so we can benefit from it. And of course, one of the answers to this and one of the best practices here is to perform automated or hybrid collection, interpretation, classification, and analysis of data, right? It is easier to connect and identify relationships once the data that we harvested gets structure in the native language and through some frameworks of analysis that will allow us to then connect the dots. And this is really where Recorded Future comes into place, and this is where we bring, our difference. And the fact that we are currently the largest commercial collection platform, so we have the broadest visibility outside your fences. And this is, going very, very close with the message of Microsoft of working better together, right? We provide visibility outside the fences and are able to bring this perspective together with the internal perspective. We work with automated and human analysis, right? We have a hybrid approach as well. We like to deliver our intelligence with relevance in time, and we talk about intelligence that is in real time, but also historically relevant intelligence, and that ties very closely with the context. That is very important, and we'll see later. It's very important for us to understand what is the context of that intelligence, because otherwise we will not be able to apply it properly. And of course, you need to have intelligence that is applicable in various use cases, and we will show some examples a little bit later on. But let's focus on, the value of threat intelligence for security operations. And here, what is the main purpose of intelligence? First of all, of course, to maximize the value of existing security investments. And really, the idea is to identify, prioritize, and take actions against threats with confidence, right? And here we need to understand that not everything that has a capability is a threat for a company. So we need to understand that only some things are relevant for the company, only some particular capabilities in the wild are relevant and can be considered threats when we talk about intelligence, right? So let's focus a little bit on what are the best practices to apply intelligence or have an intelligence-led approach in various stages like prevention, detection, and incident response with the tools that Microsoft Azure and Defender provide us, right? And I will not focus on the identify part, even though, here the value is obvious. Think about the fact that you identify a vulnerability and then you want to understand what is the level of exploitation in the wild, right? So even from that perspective of prioritizing, for example, vulnerabilities and risk against your company assets, security intelligence can provide, value. But let's focus on these, three middle stages of prevention, detection, and response in Microsoft Azure Sentinel and Defender with recorded future driven intelligence. So the first one is prevention, right? And when we talk about intelligence for prevention, that's a critical thing, right? We talk about denying the capability of certain assets to be able to perform traffic or to be able to talk with other entities that might be outside your infrastructure. So whenever we adopt intelligence for prevention purposes, we need to understand that it is important or critical to have a variation of indicators because everybody approaches prevention from different perspectives of the pyramid of pain. We need to have relevant context. I don't want to block inbound and outbound when only outbound might be relevant, right? I want to make sure that I integrate that intelligence with the tools that I have available. And also, I want to make sure that that intelligence is relevant in time and it has the proper validation from the vendor to be able to introduce it in a prevention mechanism. And once we assure all of those, it's very easy to perform something like this with Microsoft Defender using Recorded Future connector in the Logic apps. And here we have an example of a Logic app running based on our connector, importing dedicated data sets for prevention that are high quality and validated, and just running these workflows and pushing that data towards Defender, of course, for both prevention or detection at the level of the agent, right? So we talk about both types of indicators that can be pushed towards Defender, so you can have an intelligence-led approach of prevention or detecting based on the agent that sits on your endpoints. Of course, the next steps after prevention is being able to detect what you are not able to prevent against, right? And here we talk about really two types of detection. We talk about continuous monitoring and we talk about threat hunting. Both of them can be performed inside Sentinel, but it's very important whenever we think about an intelligence-led approach here to understand that even though these two are similar because they leverage IOCs, they use similar types of telemetry, they're actually very different because intelligence applied in these two contexts is different. Threat hunting might be focused on a particular threat, or it might be having more historical relevance, where continuous monitoring is something that you always check against your real-time telemetry. So the aspect of relevance in time is very important whenever you adopt intelligence for the purpose of detecting. Another aspect that I consider very important, and it is something that I really care about, is the fact that prioritization and triage is not just the duty of an analyst. So I like to think about, intelligence-led approaches that allow us to do prioritization and triage from the detection phase, right? If I have the relevant context that will allow me to say this alert is more important, or this event is more important than the other because the context in which it triggers from the intelligence perspective is much more critical for the business, then we can apply, through applying intelligence properly, we can apply prioritization from the detection phase through the content editor that is writing those rules of detection and minimizing the effort that the analyst needs to do in level 1 or level 2 for triaging and prioritizing those events. So that is the context that allows you to do all of those. And here I have an example of how that would be applied in Sentinel by importing a specific, for example, list data set from Recorded Future, making sure that we push those as native TI indicators inside Sentinel, and of course benefiting from the default rules or the custom rules that might be written upon those indicators. Again, approaching things like this and importing automatically data sets and intelligence into Sentinel will enable not only the default rules, but also will type into functionalities like the threat intelligence platform that Sentinel has built in. And you will probably observe here the fact that this data set is called actively communicating CNC. So the relevance in time here is manifesting immediately, and you know that this is something that you would like to correlate against your real-time telemetry because it is presenting indicators that are relevant in time now, and they are active as we speak, right? With different levels of confidence depending on the context that we've understood and we've collected and structured. Now, the last aspect of applying security intelligence is during the response. And here we talk about, providing the analysts with the relevant context to be able, in an automated or manual fashion, take decisions about the importance of incidents and alerts. And here we are leveraging, of course, the same connector which connects to our API and behaves like a wrapper, but we leverage those in playbooks inside Sentinel that can be automatically ran on top of incidents or on top of alerts, and those will be providing with the context directly back into the incident, or allowing the analyst to pivot to the Recorded Future platform if that is desired, to get that right context to be deciding if an incident should be prioritized or not, or what is the level of response that can be applied to that. And here we're talking about enriching and providing context for IPs, hashes, domains, and URLs, and also vulnerabilities in case you are performing enrichment or correlations of vulnerability data from the defender inside Sentinel. Now, before I end the presentation, and of course there are many other things to be mentioned about the value of threat intelligence and intelligence-led security operation inside Azure, but before I close the session, I want to invite you to access our free trial. We actually just launched this a week ago, and we are offering a free trial for Azure Sentinel and Recorded Future. We have a series of playbooks that are already published on the Microsoft GitHub. We talk about playbooks for detection purposes. We talk about playbooks for prevention and also enrichment. They're just plug and play. You can deploy them directly in your infrastructure. The only thing that you'll probably need is just a user to be able to access the security graph API from Microsoft and a license from Recorded Future that you'll be able to get through the trial. And of course, I encourage you to register for the Cyber Daily, which will be giving you a daily information about what is trending from the perspective of threats or industries that are being targeted. And of course, one of the important assets that Recorded Future has is the free browser extension that is reading indicators from different pages that you would like to analyze and providing on top of that automated scoring with evidence of why that scoring was applied and analyzed by Recorded Future, with full transparency into the sources and all the mechanisms that were contributing to assigning a certain risk score to that indicator.